What's up, everybody? I'm taking the next couple of weeks off, and my release schedule for the end of August and the beginning of September is going to be a little irregular. I've already recorded another episode that I hope to release sometime in the next 2 weeks, and I've got recordings lined up with all sorts of super interesting people, including the former chairman of North America for Louis Vuitton, the co-founder of Kickstarter. John Mearsheimer is also coming on the show, which is great because I'm a huge fan of John's, and it's always great to have a brainiac on foreign policy on the podcast. Who else? Michael Casey of Crypto Acclaim is coming on, as is my good friend Mike Maloney, who is long overdue for his Hidden Forces christening. It's going to be a baptism by fire. We're going to talk about gold, crypto, economic philosophy, and Tesla, I'm sure, because Mike and I have some friendly disagreements on Mr. Musk. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And there are a bunch of other great guests who I can't even recall off the top of my head, but it's going to be awesome, and it's a lot to look forward to. So what you're about to hear now is the overtime to my episode with Senator Bob Kerrey that was recorded in December of 2018, and it was the very first overtime segment that I released to our subscribers. I've chosen it for a number of reasons. First of all, I really liked it. I also really like Bob Kerrey. He's a really nice guy. It was a jovial conversation. He's a charming person. He's good-natured. And I think that it is the type of conversation that's missing in politics today. I don't think every conversation should be like this, but I think it would be nice if we had more of them, where we could talk about politics in a way that was also just not necessarily adversarial, because I don't think that Bob Kerrey and I agree about everything. So it was fun. He's so funny, and I think in that sense it'll be a joy to listen to. But I also think it's informative. Bob Kerrey was one of the 10 9/11 commissioners, and he actually gives his opinion about what he thinks the role of the Saudi government was in the 9/11 attacks, which I think is a really big deal. It's something that Senator Bob Graham has spoken about. In fact, I asked him specifically about Bob Graham's work in this area. So in some sense, the most remarkable thing about Bob Kerrey's admissions is how unremarkable they are. But of course, if we had heard these statements back in 2001, 2002, the world may be a very different place today, and certainly Saudi Arabia would have lost its single biggest ally and protector in the United States. So before I toss it to the episode, guys, it is the end of August. I am going to take a little bit of time off. Don't expect anything next week. If there is something, it'll be a surprise. But we're going to pick back up in the beginning of September. I hope you all have a great end to your August and that you have some fun plans. And in the meanwhile, please enjoy my overtime with Senator Bob Kerrey. All right, we're back.
That was a nice break.
That was a nice break.
Great,
that was a great break. So the one thing I want to ask you before we get to this, your experience in the commission, and ask you about Khashoggi and all this stuff now with the Saudis. We were talking about Elizabeth Warren 2020. What do you think is going to happen in 2020? Now, we have Donald Trump, who's a phenomenon. I've never seen anything like him. Certainly, Andrew Jackson could qualify, maybe, right? But he was also at a different time.
My God, Andrew Jackson.
Well, they had to resuscitate him in the White House. He drank out his inauguration. He was pretty bad.
Yeah, he drank. Big deal, but he didn't lie every 5 minutes. I mean...
But don't politicians all lie? It's just, the way he...
No.
You take offense to that.
No. First of all of us lie. You find me a human being lying, he's the guy in the street corner saying the world's going to come to an end. So there isn't anybody that it's true that politicians probably lie 20% more than everybody else. But we've never seen anything like Donald Trump. We've never seen anybody that covers his observations of what's going on in the world with things that are factually incorrect. So it's way beyond anything we've seen before.
Is it just about his lying or his facts, or is it more about, to me, like...
It's not just lying. It's taking credit for everything. There's a boastfulness that I find to be offensive, because I don't think it's the way you get things done. I don't think you get things done by saying, I all the time.
No, I agree. Yeah. But for me now, it's not about the lying. What makes him so unique in that sense is the temperament.
Look,
it's his temperament.
You had 2 reports that came out yesterday that were ordered by the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, run by a Republican. It's a bipartisan group, a unanimous vote to authorize those 2 reports. They provided these 2 organizations with all the stuff they had from Facebook, Google, all the other social media stuff that they had been provided, Twitter. Tell us what happened. That's what they said. First of all, they said what happened is these companies came before you and they didn't tell you the truth. But the most important thing is Vladimir Putin made a decision. He wanted Donald Trump to win the Republican primary. He wanted Donald Trump to win the general election, and he contributed to that victory. And he's continuing through social media, through trolls, to try to deliver supporting messages that are consistent with what Trump is saying. Mueller's bad and Trump is good. It's fake news, it's big witch hunt, and a hoax. So I think overwhelmingly persuasive argument that he won because of Vladimir Putin. That doesn't mean he colluded with him. That doesn't mean he violated the law. But what it means is a foreign power decided to have a major impact and use our own...
You think it had that big of an impact?
Absolutely.
Really?
Oh, my God. All you have to do is suppress the voters of 70,000 people in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and you've got 270 electoral votes.
Okay, so let's say that's true. Let's say...
Well, it is true. We got 2 lengthy reports that draw absolute positive conclusion that it's true, and then it continues.
What I'm saying is we don't know whether ultimately it swung the election or not, but what I'm saying is...
We do know that it swung the election.
We know that...
Absolutely know it swung the election.
Okay. I don't know enough to... Why are you laughing?
Because you yielded so quickly.
I yielded. You're so funny.
You didn't want to.
I figured this out of... I don't know enough to argue with you on that. It's funny that I told you this is what I saw when I watched you with Mira Caruso Cabrera and CNBC. Yeah. This is why I could tell that there are a lot of things, probably debates that you probably enjoyed debates. Did you enjoy debating in politics? Or did you just enjoy debating people like me who didn't know what they were talking about?
No, I like a good argument.
You do?
Right,
okay.
Right.
So where I was going with that was, I'm going to use the word shit again, was it because Hillary Clinton was such a shitty candidate for the Democratic Party? And so many people didn't like her. She ran against Barack Obama in 2008, lost.
If she had gotten 270 electoral votes, she'd be a genius. And were it not for Comey's 2 press conferences and the Russians, she would have got 270 electoral votes. Did she make a mistake?
She didn't wow anybody, though. Couldn't the Democrats have found a better candidate?
Well, I don't know. I mean...
you don't have to say.
But look,
I mean, a lot of people didn't like the Clintons, and she lost in 2008 to Barack Obama, and she still got the nomination, and she railroaded Bernie Sanders.
She didn't railroad Bernie Sanders. My God, look at the facts and answer this question. Who has done more for the Democratic Party? Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders declares he's not even a Democrat.
He was an independent up until...
Right. Hillary and Bill Clinton have been out helping Democrats for the last 40 years. It's not surprising that people who they helped are saying, yes, we'll help you win.
Okay, so that means that the Democratic Party was representing itself, its own interests, and not the interests of the American people.
No, first of all, it means that there's a human side to politics. I'm not doing something bad if I help somebody who helped me. We typically think that's a good thing, for somebody to help somebody else who's been helpful to them. And that's what Hillary was.
That's not bad. That's a good thing.
It's a very good thing.
Right. But I think it's a little different when it comes to
they've been involved.
Politics for the
political
American
parties.
People.
Political parties are hard. Among the reasons Bernie probably pretty smart not joining the Democratic Party, because you don't have to go to the conventions. You don't have to argue the policies. You don't have to put together a platform. You don't have to walk out with people mad at you because you support a woman's right to choose and you had an argument with somebody who don't, and you won and they didn't, or vice versa. I mean, these arguments, you can end a friendship as a consequence of working in either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. So they're hard work.
That's an interesting point you brought up. It's a rough thing. I've actually definitely lost 2 friendships as a result of this recent electoral cycle. And I find myself, and the reason why is because I've become really aversive to ideological extremism. And so I often find myself getting in trouble with people who I'm friendly with or friends with, or even the audience on the right. I've had people in the audience criticize me for being biased like against the right wing, and also the same thing, biased towards the left wing. Because I feel like people are so ideological and not willing to meet somewhere down the middle and to see the other side as a human being.
I completely agree with that. It's hard. I mean, and by the way, you asked me earlier, do I like getting in arguments? I mean, there are times I get in ferocious arguments and people get up and walk out of the dinner. So it's not,
Really.
It happens. And then you got to apologize and move on.
When was the last time that happened to you?
I think last night.
That actually happened to me a few months ago. Yeah. It doesn't happen to me often. I didn't walk out. I didn't mind it.
My sister, who was in the legislature for a while in Nebraska, and she's at least as good as I am, but people that know both of us think she's better. I mean, when we once were in a restaurant, we're having dinner with our families, and it's crowded, and it was like, you know what a Petri dish is? So in a Petri dish, you can see the bacteria spreading. Well, in our case, we're sitting there, and all of a sudden we look around, and everybody that had been close to us had left. Wow. Because we're screaming at each other.
That's how my family is. That's very funny that you guys are like that. I mean, I'm also a Greek family. We yell. So let me ask you one more question before we get to the 9/11 Commission. Do you have any guesses about what's going to happen in 2020? Who the Democrats are going to run? What's going to happen with Trump? Is he going to be impeached? What's going to come out of the Russia investigation? Like, any predictions?
Well, I don't know if I could keep it short enough to be done by midnight. So the 20 election, I think the odds favor whoever is the Democratic nominee winning the general election. There are way too many people who are Republicans who are saying, I'll vote for anybody other than Donald Trump.
So you think the Democrats have it in the bag?
No, I don't think anything is in the bag. I mean, that's the thing with politics. Like, you got it in the bag and then you don't.
It's a shit show.
No,
it's a shit show.
You just don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I think the likelihood of President Trump winning Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and he's got to win all three of those. The election comes down to that. If you win all three of those, you're going to have 270 electoral votes. Either candidate. I think it's much more likely this time around that all three of those states, where, by the way, we now have 3 Democratic governors. So I think it's much more likely that happens. And it certainly is going to be true that whoever the Democratic nominee is, they know that that's the case. They know they cannot afford to lose those 3 states.
Oh, my God. Do you think he'll be impeached? Do you think there's any chance of that? I mean, what do you think will come out of this investigation, and why has it taken so long?
Relative to every other special prosecutor, it's a fast-moving operation.
How long did the Nixon Watergate stuff take? Like 2 years about?
Almost 3 years.
Almost 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, Clinton's went on from, just after he came into office, like 7 years or something like that.
God.
So, right. So they take a while. Mueller's actually moving relatively fast. I mean, he's an extraordinary guy. I mean, Washington is a town where everything leaks, and he hasn't leaked anything. Nobody's been able to
You think Trump's scared?
Oh, my God.
He's terrified?
He's going to send Cohen to jail.
Yeah, he is going to jail. He already got 3 years.
Right. For
lying.
Not for lying, but for violating. And Trump is a part of that transaction. Right. It's not persuasive to say, well, he's my lawyer, he's going to do it. No, you tell your lawyer what to do, especially Trump. That's his whole modus operandi. Sue him. He tells the lawyer.
But that's the thing that's so crazy about Trump.
No.
What I mean is the fact that he'd be on Air Force One and he would tell people, no, I didn't know about it. And the next day, I did know about it. But that's crazy.
You can sue another human being and intimidate him. You can't sue the Department of Justice and intimidate him. So the big question is, if he doesn't win in 2020, will the Southern District bring a charge against him? And I think it's way better than 50-50 that they will.
Yeah,
well, I think it's way better than 50-50 if they go into a court of law. He's going to have a pretty serious plea bargain to avoid jail time.
He's in trouble if he's not president, that's for sure. It is challenging to impeach him if he's president.
These 2 reports that came out of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, those 2 reports are devastating. And because they provide a background that and I don't know what Mueller's going to have. I mean, whether Mueller, he actually is finishing his work as he goes. This isn't a situation where he gets all the way done and like Ken Starr, here's the report and you got to do something with it. What, he's got 17 people he's already indicted or sent to jail? I mean, he's serially going through this thing.
That's scary.
And the next one is probably Donald Jr., and then he's going to take, the question is the president himself.
You think Donald Jr. is going to jail?
I don't know, but
You don't have the answers?
I don't.
I don't have the answers?
I mean, that's a really good thing what Mueller has done is he's kept it very, very confidential. I actually don't know, but I do know is he's been very successful.
So sticking on conundrums, on Trump conundrums, let's use the case of Khashoggi and Mohammed bin Salman. By the way, is it just me, or are we obsessed with using acronyms for everything today? Now, everyone calls Mohammed bin Salman MBS, and this is like a thing. Have you noticed this? Everyone refers to people by acronyms. They used to call people by their real names. Now they call them by their initials.
It's easier. It's more.
Yeah, sure, it's easier, but
it's certainly a lot easier with an Arab name. So
yeah, for sure. Anyway, so Trump has
And by the way, that's what he likes. He prefers being called MBS. So it's
Does he
not
really?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So this is a peculiar case, peculiar beginning with Trump and the fact that he has been so adamant about not holding MBS accountable. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think they've got a lot of stake
Financially, in Saudi Arabia?
I wouldn't be
Politically.
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they come in as partners in a real estate deal after he's out of office. But no, I think Jared Kushner was given responsibility for coming up with a plan from the Middle East. I think rationally thought, well, if I can get UAE and Saudi together with Israel, we ought to be able to come up with something.
How big is an Israel in this? In other words, like
well,
Netanyahu
I do think the Palestinian issue is a big deal, and I think if you can get something that is coming out of Saudi Arabia and UAE with Israel on board, I think it's going to be easier to sell. I mean, I think it kind of makes sense on that level. So they have a lot of stake there, and I think they have a lot of stake in the military. I mean, Trump is. You got to give him credit for being honest on that. He said, I'm doing it for oil, I'm doing it for weapons contracts. So I think they've made a big bet on Saudi. And they're not the only ones. I mean, there have been a lot of people getting money from the Vision Fund right now. That's 75% of that is Saudi money. And by the way, I think it is important that we help Saudi make this transition from, basically an autocratic kingdom to something that has a more liberal foundation. I am not confident that MBS is the guy to get it done. And what Khashoggi has done, the Khashoggi case has done, for me, a couple things. It's shown how massively incompetent these guys are. And, 12 guys with a bone saw flying in and then flying back out. How hard was that to figure out? 100-0 vote in the Senate saying Khashoggi did it.
Yeah.
But the president continued to say, well, we're not sure about it. But I think it's going to lead to a significant change in our policy towards the war in Yemen. I think that's going to be a good thing. But I'm not confident that MBS is going to pull this off. I mean, he announces women can drive cars. And what else does he do? He puts the women who are advocating for women to drive cars in jail. So don't put me down in the camp of people that are optimistic about the transition to a more modern society and a more modern economy in Saudi Arabia.
15 years ago, we never would have heard any negative comments about Saudi Arabia. The criticism of Saudi Arabia began really with the Barack Obama administration, and I think a big part of that ultimately was about oil, right, and fracking and energy independence.
15 of the 19 hijackers were Saudis.
Right.
So,
well, they were. You're right, they were, and you know a lot about that. You were one of the 10/9/11 commissioners.
Yeah, and the first two planes that left the United States were carrying Saudis out of the United States. So
exactly,
right.
The Bin Laden family.
Right.
But that was totally swept under the rug by the media. That was not discussed. That wasn't something that we weren't told.
I don't think I would say, correct and say it was not totally swept under the rug, but you're right. It wasn't the major media story.
Why wasn't it? Was it because the Bush family was so connected to the Saudis?
No, I think it's genuinely a complicated story. I mean, one of the problems that the 9/11 Commission had, in addition to the running on a limited time frame, which limited our capacity to do all the things that you'd like to be able to do.
Why was that? Because they just wanted to get it over with?
The Republican Congress wouldn't extend our timeline, and the Republican administration didn't want to extend the timeline.
Why? It was such an important investigation.
It was an important investigation, and part of it is it's impossible for anyone, myself included, because I was there in the 1990s as well. I was there when the first attack, the 93 attack on the World Trade Center.
Yeah, 93 attack.
Right. I mean, that was the same guys. And we were making fun of them. We called them nose hair and salami, because they tried to get the deposit back on the Ryder truck. And we didn't size it correctly. We had supported the Mujahideen in Afghanistan all the way through the 1980s. The Russians leave in December of 1988. And what do? We basically said, well, that's done. And, well, it wasn't done.
Right. And you said you were on the Intelligence Committee when
you
were in the Senate, right? So you were getting a lot of these reports.
Getting a lot of the reports. And
you were not caught by surprise that Bin Laden was involved?
No, I was not surprised at all. I mean, we were, first the 93 attack, we didn't put him on the 93 attack, but we knew it was coming from a group of Islamic individuals who believe that we're a threat to their vision for the world. So they regarded us as an enemy. And they regarded us as apostates, and they regarded us as a good thing if they could kill Americans. And that's what they were doing with the World Trade Center. And then the big one was the 98 attacks on our embassy, Dar es Salaam and Nairobi. And
the Cole.
Well, then the Cole is 2000, but the Nairobi attack was a really sophisticated operation. That wasn't just a couple of guys, lighting up a a room with automatic weapons. I mean, that was a very sophisticated operation and a very successful operation. And we were 98% certain it was Al-Qaeda that did it, and we were 100% certain that it was the Cole. We just didn't respond. We let them keep their sanctuary in Afghanistan. We threw a couple of cruise missiles in there right after Bill Clinton said I did have sex with that woman after all. That was the wag the dog accusation that was made against him. And we didn't do enough. We just didn't. We didn't warn the airports after we had information. The walls that were created between the FBI and the CIA made it difficult. It is true the leadership was concerned about it, but we just didn't have a coordinated effort, and we certainly didn't have a global effort. And after 9/11, we did. And certainly after the reforms that Congress enacted. And the problem the Bush people had is that no matter what you do, the focus is going to be on them because they had the power. They're in office, and it can be uncomfortable. It can inhibit their capacity to plan and do additional things. And one of maybe the most important contribution I made to the 9/11 Commission was to argue that we should not have minority reports, that we need to be unanimous, because if we weren't unanimous, the public could...
Was there a minority report?
No,
there wasn't. Okay.
One of the few times in my life where I successfully argued for something and got it. So we didn't have minority reports. There were 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans, and they were selected in an extremely partisan environment. And thanks to Tom Kaine and Lee Hamilton, it wasn't partisan. We didn't attack Bill Clinton. We didn't attack George Bush. Many of the criticism came from Republicans that thought we ought to attack Bill Clinton and a lot of Democrats that thought we ought to attack President Bush. And that was among the reasons why it was difficult to extend the timeline. But the central problem was it was a conspiracy. It was a conspiracy going back...
I've heard you say 30 years.
Yeah, I mean, quite a long time. I mean,
but when you say it was a conspiracy, you mean it was a conspiracy by the Mujahideen and by Al-Qaeda and the factions?
Yes. There wasn't a...
What about factions of the Saudi government? At the highest levels, that's quoting Bob Graham. He said that this goes up to the highest levels of the Saudi government, and he refers to the 28 pages that I referred to at the beginning of our interview that 60 Minutes has published a piece on. I think were part of a joint congressional inquiry into the 9/11 attacks that happened right after you guys released your...
Look, the world on looking at 9/11 oftentimes divides into different camps. In this camp, I can't imagine, I don't think it's credible that 15 Saudis could participate in an attack on the United States of America without somebody at the senior level knowing about it.
So what does that mean? What does that mean?
It means they got blood on their hands.
But why would they do that? Why would senior members of the Saudi government want to be involved in an attack against the United States?
Because the family made a decision. We're going to support the Wahhabis. We're going to support people who have really seriously radical beliefs about the world, and that everybody ought to be like completely pure and follow our rules, and we get to decide what the rules are. It's a radical form of Islam.
But the family owed their existence to the Bush family, their existence to H.W. Bush.
No, they owed their survival.
That's what I mean.
No, they owed their survival to the support of the Wahhabis. And it wasn't until they got attacked, until Al-Qaeda starts going after them in 2003 or 4, they said, oh my God, we better be a part of trying to beat back radical Islam or we're not going to survive.
But I'm talking about 1991, where the United States came in the defense of Kuwait and stationed troops in Saudi Arabia.
Right.
But the Saudis were concerned that Saddam Hussein would invade into Saudi Arabia. And they were grateful to have American troops in Saudi Arabia, weren't they?
And they paid for it.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that they
were they grateful? Yes, they were grateful, and they didn't trust that Bin Laden. Bin Laden wanted to do it himself, and he regarded it as an offense to Islam that we were on the holy soil where Mecca and Medina are, and that we invited apostate.
So what you're saying basically is that the Saudi regime is so unpopular and so corrupt that on the one hand they needed the United States to protect them against a state actor in Saddam Hussein with his army, but at the same time had to appease the radical Wahhabis, and so they were doing this balancing act.
Right.
And that their involvement in 9/11 was a result of their need to appease these terrorists were threatening their own regime.
That's correct. Now, I need to be clear about something that I wasn't clear about. The 9/11 Commission did not conclude that the Saudis were responsible for 9/11. On the other hand, it did not conclude, as the Saudis have been saying in court, that we vindicated them. We did not vindicate them. We did not say they didn't do it, and we didn't say that they did. So what I expressed earlier was my own opinion based upon my own reading of both of the documents that we had, as well as some of the documents that we didn't have.
What I find confusing in this is how this would sit with George W. Bush and the Bush administration, knowing this, as I'm sure they did, how that sat with them and why they would ship the family members out? Was that, do you think, something just out of blind loyalty?
I don't really have the answer to the question. I don't know. All I know is they were allowed to leave, and I think part of it was they were afraid for their lives. They want to get out of here because they knew.
The families were, but why would the Bush administration allow them out?
You can take a benign point of view. My benign point of view would be I'd give them the benefit of the doubt and say, look, they knew with 15 Saudi hijackers on there that Americans might be saying, we want to punish anybody who's still here. Because I don't have any evidence that there was any other motivation behind that.
Okay, so then why then did the Bush administration not call out the Saudis? Given what we're talking about here. I mean, if Bush, he was on the rubble in 9/11. He bombed Afghanistan, invaded Iraq. Why wouldn't he have put the Saudis on notice? What do you think? I mean, you've been in politics.
Well, I think the Saudis were put on notice. I mean, they certainly knew that they had
fucked up.
Well, yeah. When 15 of your own people were on those planes, they could hardly say that the Saudis weren't involved. So they were put on notice. But they didn't really, I would say, get religion until all of a sudden radical Islamic groups started to attack them. But they knew it. I mean, they had to know what the Wahhabis were doing. The Wahhabis were moving all over the world. The worst and relatively close area for them to go, they were in Mumbai, setting up schools. And
right.
I do understand why the kings did that, why the royal family did it, but I think it created major problems both for them and for us.
But I think it raises questions that will never be answered for the American public because the Bush administration was Machiavellian in the extreme. We're living now in a time where what's his name is playing, Christian Bale's playing Dick Cheney.
Looks pretty good.
Looks pretty good. I forgot how scary Dick Cheney was.
Look, here's the thing. When you start off with a presumption that it's a conspiracy,
of course,
alternatives conspiracies are relatively easy to put in the storyline. It just is. I mean, I still get people come up and say, well, the Jews did it. The government did it. It was an inside job. Couldn't possibly have knocked those planes down.
There were holograms.
Yeah, they couldn't possibly have knocked those buildings down with
right.
the plane. So, I mean, there are alternative storylines that go on about 9/11. But I don't have any doubt about who organized it. I don't have any doubt it began with bin Laden's desire to attack the United States. It was a series of events that led up to the attack on us on our own ground. So I don't have any doubt about that at all. I know what Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's role was in this thing. I know
93.
Yeah, but not only in 93, but again in 2001. Right. So I don't have any doubt about that's where it came from. But there's a lot of moving parts beyond that you're right, we probably never will know.
Yeah. Senator Kerrey, thank you for spending so much time with me between two bathroom breaks. And
thank you for putting the bathroom so close.
I had a great time having you on the program. Thank you.
You're welcome. Nice to be with you.